Welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast by Venus O'Hara. I'm here to welcome you into the world of orgasmic living by hosting experts to discuss orgasmic topics such as nutrition, spirituality, personal development, sexuality, and much more. Here, we will offer lifestyle lessons that can help you lead a fulfilling, joyous, and orgasmic lifestyle. I'm your guide, Venus O'Hara. Welcome to episode 115 of the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast with Venus O'Hara. In this Pink Moon episode, we discuss relationships and we take a deep dive into communication strategies and how to leverage conflict. We speak with Dr. Rachel Glik, a relationship therapist and author of the book A Soulful Marriage, healing your relationship with responsibility, growth, priority, and purpose. I also review the book The Power of Enough, Finding Joy in Your Relationship with Money by future podcast guest Elizabeth Husserl. And the episode ends with a guided meditation with affirmations for overcoming conflict in relationships. But first, let me share with you something that I just discovered during a conflict in a relationship that might be useful to you. I am so excited to share today's interview with you with Dr. Rachel Glik, the author of A Soulful Marriage. I had such a wonderful conversation with her after reading, I think I was about halfway through her book when we spoke. And one of the pillars of A Soulful Marriage is how to leverage conflict or how to turn conflict into closeness. And that is something that I am very interested in lately. When I look at my single friends, I can see their fear about relationships. And one of the fears is getting hurt. Imagine if someone, obviously a lot of people get hurt by love. It's something we crave, but also something we fear, which is kind of ironic, seeing as fear is the opposite of love. And the big fear is getting hurt again, opening up, being vulnerable, feeling those amazing highs, and then suddenly someone has this power to really hurt you. And I saw a quote once, I can't remember exactly what it was, but love is like trusting someone with your most vulnerable parts and trusting them they're not going to use the power they can to actually really make you feel bad. But sometimes when, tensions are high, we can say things we don't mean. And these things can really cause deep wounds that can be felt for years and years and years. And that is something that is so hard. And I have a couple of friends who are going through separations at the moment, and there's so much pain involved. So when you've had a few of those in your life, it's kind of natural that people tend to be less trusting. But I also believe that if you're not trusting your partner, you're not willing to be vulnerable, you do also miss out on those wonderful, wonderful things that make love so incredible. And it is the muse of so many great movies and so many great songs as well. And another thing which I think is a big obstacle for single people is not having healthy relationship role models. I think a lot of people see the relationships around them and think, oh my God, I'm a bit lonely, I would like intimacy, but oh my God, what I'm seeing around me doesn't inspire me at all. And that can be quite sad as well. I know so many people who have these insta-perfect relationships, and that behind the scenes, it's not like that at all. So we can, it's very tricky to find the right partner. And I do believe that one of the most important things in a relationship, to keep the spark alive at least, is to actually be committed to the growth of the relationship. And we go into that in detail in this interview today. And going back to conflict, even though it's something that we often fear because of the wounds that can be, created and provoked from conflict, I've come to believe lately that conflict is a massive opportunity for deeper connection. And sometimes when something or someone hurts you, it's because it matters, even though obviously we're not talking about toxic dynamics here at all. But sometimes, if you are open and vulnerable about why or what something, what hurt you and why, then if your partner is a good person and they love you, then surely they would try and not trigger you in that way in the future. Or you can actually have a conversation about what happened, what stories are you telling yourself, and try and find peace that way. Obviously, you have to be in a situation where you're not, emotions are not running high, and you both are committed to finding peace, not just being right. And that's a bigger shift to make. I remember once I went to this love and dating event, and the woman who was giving the event, she brought her partner along as if he was like exhibit A. Look, it worked for me. I'm with this guy. And they are in a very happy relationship. And he spoke, he gave a few words just to give his perspective without taking the limelight away from her. And he said something that at the time I thought was very reductive. But now with time and experience and hindsight, I've come to change my mind a little bit. And he said because his partner is just open to personal growth in general, he doesn't really feel fazed by any challenge that they might encounter in their relationship. Because if you're committed to growth and you're committed to growth and so is your partner, then that is definitely a big help in terms of, knowing, or it kind of can really help the longevity and happiness and flow of your relationship. But aside from personal growth, I think, when two people come together, there is a third entity that is created, and you both have to be committed to that third entity, which is the relationship. And I've been in situations with people who are into personal growth, but they weren't into the relationship. And that's been really hard. It can't just be one person who's initiating the talks or the advancement of commitment and plans and things like that. It has to be like a dance, I think. And mutual desire, I believe, is the foundation for everything. Because when you are both desiring the relationship and each other, then I think you can work a lot of things out, basically. But also, I think going to relationship therapists and having good communication frameworks can really, really help. Now, that's what I love about this book, A Soulful Marriage. And I actually shared something super personal in the interview with Dr. Rachel Glik that I'm going to share with you today without going into the actual full details of the context, because it's going into territories that are kind of personal. But I'm going to share this because it could be a tool for you if you are in a relationship that has some conflict in it, and you might not be able to afford a therapist. I've been using ChatGPT as my life coach, relationship coach, and so many different ways, and spiritual coach as well. And it's been really illuminating, because a lot of people speak badly of AI or ChatGPT, but it's a great tool, and it's neutral, and it just depends on, you give it the right prompts, and it can actually work wonders for you. But I was in a conversation, I wasn't having a conflictive conversation, let's say, with someone, and we just weren't really hearing each other or understanding each other. And I just felt incredibly frustrated, because I had good intentions, I wanted resolution, but the other person wasn't really perceiving that from me. And sometimes we can have great intentions, but that doesn't always guarantee that what we are intending is received in the way that we would like. And so I was receiving, after I was giving what I thought was, diplomatic, good intentions, seeking resolution, but I was receiving a very different tone from the other person. And that really bewildered me. I was flabbergasted. I was thinking, what is going on here? Are we in two different conversations? And I took the initiative to actually put those conversations from him into ChatGPT. And I asked the prompt, I made the prompt, what is the tone of this message? And what the answer blew my mind. It was things like passive aggressive, blame shifting, gaslighting, minimization. And some of these terms I wasn't really familiar with. And I did it with a few more messages, and these terms were actually recurring. And it was also the message was analyzed, and it was giving examples of this behavior. And also that was helping me to understand how I was feeling, because sometimes we can be kind of manipulated sometimes, maybe not intentionally, by in situations of conflict. I mean, you can't judge someone in that situation because they're not at their best, let's say, because we can all say things and do things that aren't true, that we're not proud of when we are in a state of anger or frustration or sadness. And I was really blown away by that. But just learning these words like minimization or blame shifting, I actually could take a deeper dive into what that actually meant and see examples of that and how I was part of a dynamic that I wasn't quite aware of. And it made me really, I don't know, it gave me a lot of clarity, to be honest. And I think sometimes, when we're in situations, don't take someone else's word for it, who's telling you you're this, you're that, or what you're saying is this or that. I mean, I think AI is actually a neutral tool that can actually help you see things in a more objective way. And I know for me, it really helped me a lot. And as a result of what I was uncovering via ChatGPT, I was offered, journaling prompts and just ways to de-escalate the conversation with examples. I didn't actually copy and paste those because you could really tell when things are written by AI, but I kind of got the idea of, okay, because I mean, I was in a situation where I was not angry, I was just more sad and trying to find resolution. I wasn't just doing that because ChatGPT was giving me these neutral prompts, but it was really a really interesting situation. And I'm sharing this because if you're in a situation like that with conflict, maybe this could help you as well. And that's why I'm sharing this today, because this is kind of personal to me. But yeah, I'm going to go into more detail about relational dynamics and conflict in particular with Dr. Rachel Glik today. And if you have anything to add, we would love to hear more, because then this is something that, is a big hurdle in many relationships. And it's something that's inevitable as well, conflict. But there definitely are ways of handling conflict that can be much better than using emotional manipulation or things like minimization or gaslighting or blame shifting, because that's blame shifting. Oh my God, that's very, very manipulative. And when you complain about something and then it's your fault because you're complaining, it's, oh my God, you can feel like, oh, did I say too much? And so it's very, very tricky. And we have to be very careful about who we let into our lives, who we let have this control over or perceived control over our mental well-being. It's really, really tricky. And we have to have a lot of, self-respect, good boundaries, and and be a better gatekeeper. That's something I've learned, is I need to be a much better gatekeeper. And I do believe that self-love is the foundation for that. And because the more you love yourself, the better boundaries you have, and the less, behavior like that you're going to accept. And we should never accept things like emotional manipulation, or if we are in situations like that, perhaps the other person's not aware that they are doing it, but it's good to call them out in a way that's not blamey either, because we can't get into some kind of blame game, because that can be incredibly, incredibly toxic. But it's that said, let's discover what Dr. Rachel Glik has to say, because it's a fascinating conversation. I cannot wait to share it with you. Are you looking to strengthen your pelvic floor in a fun and engaging way? Introducing PeriFit, the pelvic floor trainer that combines biofeedback with interactive video games. With PeriFit, you can track your progress and improve your pelvic health while playing games with your vagina on your smartphone. It's easy, effective, and more importantly, it's fun. For a limited time, you can get 25% off with the code Venus15 at checkout. Visit perifit.co today and take control of your pelvic health with PeriFit. That's perifit.co, and use the code Venus15 for 25% off. The link is also in the show notes below. Strengthen, play, and thrive with PeriFit. Disclaimer: consult your healthcare provider before starting any new fitness program. Now it's time for this episode's interview. We speak with Dr. Rachel Glik, a relationship therapist and author of the book A Soulful Marriage: Healing Your Relationship with Responsibility, Growth, Priority, and Purpose. Dr. Rachel Glick, welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. It's a real pleasure to have you here. For those who are unfamiliar with your work, could you tell us what you do?
Yes, I'm a full-time psychotherapist for individual and couples and families, and I also am a Kabbalah teacher
Okay,
and
interesting.
writer.
Okay.
Yes.
And what inspired you to follow this path?
I actually knew from a very young age that I was supposed to be doing something to help people. I
Hmm.
felt the suffering of others pretty deeply, but then I got a lot of messages that I was too sensitive, that I should stay away from that. So eventually, the calling kept coming and I followed the path. So then I became a counselor, and then that evolved into specializing in relationships.
So how was that? Did that happen organically, specializing in relationships?
It actually was. It was in part because of my own relationship, my own marriage. I've been married for 36 years,
Wow.
and was shocked by the struggles we were having, even though I was so sure about him in the beginning.
Hmm.
So that kind of really influenced me. That wow, like I just was caught off guard that we have to work on this, and then also I just kept receiving people reaching out for help with their relationship. It wasn't what I intended to specialize in, but the need is so there, and the universe just kept sending them to me. So then it became a specialty.
Amazing. I've actually just been reading your book, A Soulful Marriage. You can see it in the background there. What inspired
Yeah.
you to follow this, to write this book?
Well, the it wouldn't let up. Like I'm in a session, excuse me, with a couple, and this really kind of magic often happens where there's so much creativity happening and so much transformation. It's not easy, believe me, for any of us involved. But it was painful that it was ending right there with this couple. And I know that it has a reverberating effect in their life and other people they connect with. But I just really kept feeling the yearning to share more of what happens in a session in a book for those who either don't come to counseling, don't even think of it, either if they want to enrich their relationship or if they're having troubles.
Hmm.
So that was really the impetus. The pain of not sharing it with more people is what drove me.
And I read the blurb, just even the description of the book, it gives a lot of hope. Would you like to give us a summary of what it's
Mm.
about?
Yeah. So the idea is that there's so much we don't know. We're not trained in school
Hmm.
on how to be a good listener, how to navigate conflict, how to really create long-lasting love. And so the hope is that it's really about being trained. It's a trainable skill to become better at being in a relationship. And so the book is based on four pillars that I have found in my own marriage and in working with couples that really are kind of ironclad, that if you lean on these four pillars, you can turn so much in your relationship around, or at least enhance what it is that you currently are experiencing and make it better.
And what are those four pillars?
The four pillars are: first is responsibility, and that means we are each responsible for our own happiness and well-being. And I don't know how deep you want me to go into each,
Yeah,
or should
yeah,
we
for
just do an
sure. Yeah,
overview? Okay, sure.
yeah.
So in that one, in pillar one, the that's where we want to cover things in ourselves and in our life, like our self awareness and how much we know ourselves, how authentically are we living. All that influences our own well being, but it also then influences how we're going to show up in a relationship.
Mm.
And it's the general idea that our relationship with ourself comes first, and that we are responsible, not our partner, for being fulfilled and for living our purpose and feeling peaceful and engaged and inspired and good about ourselves. And so that also includes working on self love and working on healing areas where you feel shame or where you don't feel good about yourself, and self care, taking care of your mind, body, and spirit,
Mhm.
and then self development, which is a huge one. And that is really wanting to work on your character, work on your habits, work on areas that are of your growth areas.
Mhm.
That's pillar one.
Okay.
Excuse me.
And
Should I go
next?
right on to pillar two?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, pillar two is what brings most people to counseling, and that is
Mhm.
growth.
Mhm.
And that's where the byline for that, or the consciousness, each pillar has a consciousness. And then the idea is it's a trainable skill to work on living in line with your behaviors, to be in line with that consciousness. So the second pillars, the consciousness of it, is that we use our friction to help us grow individually and closer together.
Isn't that sometimes a contrast? I mean, or there's a lot of area of, or a contradiction sometimes, because sometimes when you're in a relationship, maybe you don't grow in the same direction as your partner. And
Yes, exactly. And that's all in pillar two in terms of growth. Like, so I have a whole chapter on how you navigate your differences and what happens when you start going in different directions. And couples who really communicate well and who really have a good consciousness and a commitment to the relationship can navigate quite a few big differences.
Mhm.
But it doesn't always mean that you're meant to be together. Sometimes it means that you grow in different directions, and that's okay. But it's normative to have differences, and it's normative to grow throughout your relationship. The key is how you can work on staying close and connected and growing together.
And the third pillar?
And the third pillar is priority. And that's where like all the good stuff is in terms of
Mhm.
the fun stuff of like how you make your partner feel cherished. And the consciousness is we make each other the most important other person in our lives and in a way that they know it. And
Mhm.
that other person means other than your relationship with yourself, because that has to be the priority, the first priority in a healthy way. But it's really like, where is it that we are making sure we know the language, that the sweet spot of makes what makes our partner feel like they are so special to us, and
Mhm.
that sense of creating a sanctuary together where you just know you have each other's back and you really are grateful for who you have and you see the good in them. And a lot of things get in the way. And that also means really, I have a whole couple of chapters on how you identify what I call triangles, which are like things that can become wedges,
Mhm.
anywhere from kids to in laws to work to addiction. Lots of things become a threat to that sense of priority. And it's good to be aware of them and then work on how you can close those gaps.
It comes to mind now. I live in Spain, so the family
Mm.
is a very
Uh-huh.
strong unit. And I was just thinking about a friend who was telling me that her, mother-in-law is a real obstacle in their relationship, and her partner is kind of prioritizing the mother over her, and that can be quite common, really, depending on the culture, especially. How could
Yes.
people deal with that?
Yes. Well, the culture is a huge factor. When I really see that
Mm.
strong, with like where couples sometimes come because of that, into
Okay.
counseling. Yeah, it's like it's either we go to the counselor or the divorce lawyer. Like it's
Yeah.
it's too much. So you have to be sensitive to the cultural differences.
Mm.
But it's the main thing is that it's a reframe of consciousness that that the partner needs to come first and know that they're first, and learning how to set those boundaries with the family and
Mm.
still honoring them and still making sure they know that they're valued. But, it's really up to the partner who has the parent who's maybe too involved, that's becoming a threat to the relationship. It's up to that partner to set the boundary with the family and explain that this is how we are going to be living our life together. This is what works for us. We're creating our family. We love you as part of our family, but so it doesn't come without some sort of upheaval to make those changes. But if you really want the most out of the relationship, then there needs to be a shift. And it brings us
Mm.
back to pillar two, which to do so often requires growth. You have to take
Mm.
a look at like is it that I'm afraid of, or what is the way, the belief system I have that makes me think I need to prioritize my mother over my partner? Where is it that I'm leaning too much on that, or I'm afraid to upset the apple cart, or where do I not am I not addressing an issue in my marriage I need to address,
Mm.
that it's easier to just focus on my mother?
Mm.
So that requires taking a look within to see what may be
Mm.
influencing that. But it's valid, whatever, this friend of yours, whatever, it's
Yeah,
valid that,
yeah.
yeah, it's a terrible feeling to not feel like a priority in a relationship.
I know
Yeah,
I've lived it. It's awful. Yeah. So what
it
about
is.
when kids, but I think a lot of people put kids first when they arrive as well. So how
Yes.
can people still learn to prioritize their relationship and intimacy and date nights and things like that?
Yes.
Mm.
I think part of it is that's why I wrote the book, is
Mm.
awareness, is to realize that this is a thing, that this
Mm.
isn't, that we have to go against what feels natural sometimes. As a mother, I felt it was very natural to over focus really on my kids. It,
Mm.
it wasn't it wasn't because I felt society thought I should. Maybe that was the case, but it was lazy. I just found it easier and more natural to focus on them than my spouse, and it was really starting to impact our relationship. So I think awareness is the first step, And to know that you can make small shifts, you're not going to neglect your children. The opposite is the case.
Hmm.
That children do better when parents are close and connected, and when they aren't always such a child-centered home. And
Mm.
it doesn't mean you're going to neglect them. But I have found that small shifts can go a long way. Just really catching yourself and stopping yourself if you're putting your kids in priority, to even ask, like, is this something that I really need to do? Or does my relationship or my partner need some attention, or myself, working
Mm.
on like really staying balanced myself, because you'll be a happier parent and then you're going to be a better parent. So, yeah, I've written there's a whole section on that. Should kids come first in the book. And I've written for an article in Wall Street Journal, that it's a very hot topic with a lot of strong opinions about it.
Mm. Do you think it's mostly women who are putting the kids first?
I think it does happen for both, but
Mm.
I would say that the women are the leaders of that.
Mm.
Um, but I've seen it with the men, and I've seen it also with the men, including my own husband, who just assumed he trusted me. And so when he saw me doing it, he
Mm.
thought that that was just the right thing to do, and didn't
Mm.
really speak up for a long time about how bad he was feeling about himself. So I definitely see it more with the women.
Definitely. And
Yeah,
and the last pillar?
is purpose.
Mm.
And that is that we make the world better through our bond.
Oh, that
And
sounds
that's,
interesting. I haven't got to that point in your
yes.
book, so tell us about that.
Oh yes. So this one is the never, almost never, or rarely issue that people come into therapy thinking that's what they need. But it is kind of the secret sauce that takes it over the edge to create a sense of mm, an endlessness to the love and the growth and the inspiration together, because you're getting outside of yourselves when you spend some time of your time or your treasure or your gifts in such a way that you think of yourselves as, how can we add value to the world? Then you connect with what I've learned in the wisdom of Kabbalah. You connect more with your soul. You connect with the endless part of you. We have a part of us that's finite. It's our ego, the survival part of us, but we have a part of us that's connected, interconnected to the source of life itself, just
Mm.
um, to limitlessness and to creativity and new possibilities, and like the 94% of the brain or 6% of the brain we don't tap into. And so when we do this in our own lives, but especially when we do it in our relationship, then it feeds the love, and it feeds the sanctuary you've created together in a way that we often don't realize.
Yeah, I love that analogy of a relationship being a sanctuary.
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
I read that in your book as well. Yeah, did you mention?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Mm.
I was trying to come up with what to describe about it, because it's its own entity.
Mm.
There's each partner, which is two, but then there's a third entity in the relationship, which is the relationship itself and the structure you create.
Mm.
So sanctuary, I thought, was fitting, because we're here
Absolutely.
to create a safe space, and we're each responsible for that sanctuary.
Mm. And something I highlighted in the quite early on in the book was the difference between love and need. I think we often confuse that. Would you like to clarify that for me?
Yes. Yeah. Like, I think I said this in the book, that it was one of the first things my husband and I
Mm.
learned studying the wisdom of Kabbalah, was that often we didn't realize how much we were having a need-based relationship, just like trying to fill each other's needs. And that eventually leads to more emptiness, and not the potential of what you can experience. And the way we're headed as a species and as a human being is to see ourselves as injecting and adding value by, how can we be more loving? How can we create more of a feeling for our partner, that they feel loved and treasured? Not that we're responsible for their well-being all the way, but that we are seeing how we can add to the relationship, not what we can take. And in the early parts of the relationship, it's really easy to be need based, but think it's love, because you're so easily fulfilling each other's needs based on the energy of coming together and the chemistry and the excitement and all the hormones and
Mm.
pheromones and serotonin and all the good, feel good surges that we're getting. But then when that calms down, we start seeing and get caught up in, what are you doing for me lately? And then that's when we start really coming from lack in the relationship. And it's like a more ego relationship versus a soul to soul relationship.
Mhm. And do you think
So
how can people keep that alive then over time? That's a big question that people have. Because people assume,
Yes.
over there's a honeymoon period, and then you get into the kind of routine, and then that can be, and then people stop making an effort. How can people kind of
Yeah.
maintain the magic? Because I think I personally think that things can get potentially better over time. The more you know someone, the more
Hmm.
familiarity. It's probably
Hmm.
sexier. Familiarity is actually sexier than mystery, I think, because you get all those inside jokes. You make your own words up, and you have things that
Yes.
only you two understand, and that can be really alluring and enticing. Mm.
Hmm. Yeah, well, it's like we have two different systems. There's a like a short-term gratification system.
Mm.
Um, Daniel Kahneman calls it the fast thinking system, and then we have a slower thinking
Mm.
system. And in Kabbalah, we call it the ego and the soul. Like there's universal ideas, but the more that we are focused on, and initially for many of us, the ego or fast thinking system is getting all the feel goods from the newness and the mystery
Mm.
and the promise. But then there's a deeper, slower thinking system where we get it out of trust and out of, oh, I can really become the best version of myself with you. And so I think like how we can keep that spark going is really shifting our consciousness about that it's supposed to happen. Like I'm supposed to be given something so much, and that really I'm here to create something,
Mm.
and that we take on like caring about each other's soul. That's why I really feel like a spiritual approach, which is really quite simple. It's not as
Mm.
complicated or as it can be deep, but not as deep as it needs to be. Is really that we look at the relationship that we're taking on a sense of care for the soul of the other person, and not just what am I going to do to get my needs met. And when you think of yourself as one in that way, of course, with your own individuality, but when you think of yourself as one and you look at the growth, that's why Pillar Two is the most in the book, and there's so much about the potential that we can grow together and help each other grow and have breakthroughs. Then it keeps that spark alive from a deeper place,
Mm.
and it's much more sustainable. But we always have to be mindful that we're here to constantly be growing and changing and doing new things. Like my husband and I are on a kick of like trying to find places and experiences we've never experienced before that
Mhm.
neither of us have. And I mean, that's just a simple, playful thing, but that can make a difference too, because we see each other like we did in the beginning when we're adventuring and doing something completely new.
Yeah, it just made me think when people have been together for such a long time, it's really clever to try and experience new things together.
Mhm.
There is this humorous duo in England called Little Britain. I'm not sure if you've heard of them, but they do
Oh,
this
no.
sketch where they pretend to be this kind of married couple in a restaurant when there's nothing to say anymore. And the guy's like, "Oh, dinner's coming now." And the wife's like, and it's just so painful. I've been in situations like that where, you're going out for dinner with the person you're living in and living with, and then there's nothing to talk about. And I think that can happen with a lot of couples who are very familiar with each other. Do you have any tips about that, about how to maintain
Mhm.
conversations after
Yes.
many years together so you're not in that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, some of it does depend on like each person's
Mm.
neurology. Real
Mm.
introverts, they only think like if they only say something if it needs to be said, and they don't
Uh,
connect through conversation. So,
uh,
some of that is if you are with somebody who isn't as much of a talker as you, that's one of the
mm.
differences that couples have to navigate.
uh,
Then it's important to find like activities where you bond that aren't necessarily about talking, but
uh,
also how you can, and this is good for any couple, which is it's an indication that you're perhaps not engaged in an energetic or inspiring way in your life when you
mm.
don't have as much to talk about. So there are things that I give couples, and in my book I list them. They're kind of like
Mm.
I call them conversation starters, actually,
Mm.
or workshop or conversation starters to help couples connect. Because I recommend both a growth night, which could be day or night, where you work on and you talk about how can we be happy, how can I make you happier, or like what do you appreciate, what do we need to work on, and then a date night where
Mm.
you're just playing and it's no responsibilities, where you're just like it was at the beginning when you're and so at those during those times I give like a list of prompts and conversation
Mm.
starters. So
Mm.
sometimes you can even there are little um cards that are like games where you can ask each other
Mm.
questions, and don't be shy about that, like think, oh no, it should be organic. Absolutely not. Like
Mm.
if you feel like that you don't have as much that you're learning about each other, or you're as inspired or engaged, then it's a reflection of or what is it that you're doing, that where are you feeling uninspired and unengaging,
Mm.
where might you not have something? It's okay. Some days don't have something new and exciting, but then also, where is it that you're not really perhaps investing energy to see how you can keep growing and keep learning new things about each other?
Because the things, there's always something to learn about someone, no matter how well you know them.
There really is. Something
Mm,
happened recently. I was like, oh my God, I kind of knew it, but I didn't know it to the
mm,
degree. And then you can also do things to keep it like play games and have fun. Like conversation doesn't always have to be around something deep and, like groundbreaking. You
mm.
can also find ways to be playful and fun and joke around is another beautiful way to connect. Laughter bonding is fabulous.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest takeaways I've had from your book, from what I've read so far, about halfway through, is I think it was called the conflict constitution. I love it.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yes.
It's so, because I'm in a stage of my life now where I am really researching love and relationships. I've been at a bit of a crossroads, and books like yours take away my fear of relationships, because I think a lot of people who are single, they're afraid of being hurt. They have wounds. But when you know that, let's say, conflict is not necessarily a bad thing, and that there is potential for more closeness and more connection through it, it can really make things seem less daunting and gives you hope, I think. So that's something I take away from your book. Would you like to explain what the conflict constitution is?
Yes.
Mm,
Well, and you brought up something else too, but I'll first go
mm,
into the conflict constitution. So that's where we often don't realize we need to talk about conflict. We need to talk about
mm,
how we're going to have arguments,
mm,
how we're going to handle our emotions, how we're going to, whether it means like, do you want to address it right away or do you need time to cool down? And how do we navigate the difference? Or some don't mind people yelling and others cannot cope with any kind of raised voice.
mm,
And, the language that you use, are we going to, what are your triggers? Like, often we use accusatory language. You're this, you do
mm,
that, or, and how do we learn how to take ownership over our feelings and express what we need and what's bothering us without making the other person feel blamed or defensive? And so to really take the time, we just don't often put the effort into what we need to in order to create a pathway to navigate what naturally happens in a relationship. So, a conflict constitution means you sit down and when you're neutral and you're not activated, when you're
mm,
not feeling angry or hurt, that you discuss what's going to work well for me in terms of when we have some sort of conflict.
mm,
And then you are much more prepared when you have the conflict that you have, okay, we've already discussed this together, and it's less about you versus me, and it's we. How are we
mm,
going to approach this?
mm,
And I know for my husband and I, one of our agreements is because he wants to address it right away, but I can get too emotional and then I say things I regret and I'm blaming him too much. So I've let him know that I sometimes need to go for a quick walk or I need some time to get myself more grounded. I study my spirituality. I go outside. I take a shower. Sometimes a shower does me wonders.
mm,
And he knows but I reassure him in our constitution, as I know he needs reassurance. So I reassure him, this is not me shutting you out. This is me wanting to make sure I show up as the best version of myself. And we also have in our constitution that we know that we're going to use this to grow and
mm,
that we're not seeing this as bad sign, that
mm.
we know that this conflict is only here because we've committed to each other's soul and we're going to keep growing and we're going to try to understand what this means for each of us, that this is coming up for us. And that's what recently helped me understand him in a deeper way, was something that happened a couple months ago that I took till 2 p.m. to be able to talk about it.
Uh,
And then when we finally did, we had this beautiful, like curious conversation of each other and with some solutions for what we could do going forward. So,
Amazing.
and what you said is so important, that shift in thinking, that it's not to be afraid of the conflict, but having a constitution helps to know that it's going to be more likely that it'll be productive
Mm.
and that it's not going to mean something's wrong with us or it's going to be something where I'm going to feel so vulnerable and worse. And it's just a terrible feeling when you're having conflict and you don't trust that you can talk through things.
Absolutely, because I was in a situation with something that in your book resonated a lot with me. I was in a situation with someone who would stonewall me, to just
Mm.
disappear, and I found that really hard because I'm someone who needs to sort it out as soon as possible so I can go to bed and with
Yeah,
with
it's
in peace.
peaceful.
because it's really hard, especially, if you're sharing the same bed with someone and you've had some kind of conflict and there's just no touching, it's very tense and they can sleep really well and you're like, oh my God. It can be really, really hard. And then the stonewalling was something that was just it's really hard to deal with that because I think that for some person who does it, that's their safety net kind of thing.
Hmm.
So, so it's really hard. But I think it's really important to be with someone who does want to grow with you because if not, because not everyone, some people just expect it to be just to unfold naturally and everything be fine. And then when it's not, you just leave it. I think that's kind of like quite a common
It
sense.
really is.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and I would say it's probably the number one most important criteria in a relationship to see if you can work with whatever you're dealing with that may be difficult. Is there some level, maybe not the exact same level, but some level of openness to growing and looking at oneself and having insight, and without that, it's really hard to work with that. So absolutely, and the stonewalling, I think some people don't realize that yes, we do have our ways of coping, that we're not necessarily out to hurt someone,
Mm,
but it still can become very very disrespectful and almost really on the verge of abusive. If it goes too far, then it really is a level of like punishing of the other. That sometimes words we know are can be abusive, but the stonewalling can go to an extreme where it's a manipulative and just it can be just as hurtful, if not more. So that's what you can. It doesn't mean though that your go-to coping responses still tend to stay, like you still might isolate or need to pull away in order to try to feel safe if that's what your go-to is. But the key is to really, if you're with somebody who's open to growing, is to communicate about it ahead of time. That's why the Constitution is so
mm,
proactive to say, okay, when I do feel like the urge to stonewall you, or
mm,
to isolate myself or punish you based on just shutting you out and reject, that's my tendency and this is where I learned it and blah and whatever that awareness is, but this is what I think I'm willing to do so that you don't feel as hurt by it. I'm going to let you know that this is we're going to have a certain point where I'll only let it go so far, and I'm going to go and try to get myself grounded and work on that, and then let's just make sure we loop back and don't let it go too far. And that reassurance can, when you're having those like kind of night terror feelings of when somebody is like sleeping fine and you're just left reeling with
mm,
disconnection and uncertainty, and then that can help with sort of bridge that to say we will get to it. I just need a little bit of time. It's really hard though when somebody's shutting down like that to be giving.
mm,
And on the flip side, when somebody really wants to um, resolve it and doesn't is so uncomfortable with it being unresolved, which is very natural, it's also a good opportunity to grow in feeling that sense of safety inside, and
mm,
that I am okay, and that I can awaken love from within me, and a
mm,
sense of security. My sense of security comes from within me, and kind of looking at the facts. If that relationship wasn't a healthy one, then that's you can always choose to not be in that relationship and use the facts to say use it collect data. Is this the kind of person that is going to be a good match for me? But also, if it is a healthy relationship overall, to remind yourself of the good in the relationship to calm down, help yourself feel more calm.
yeah, I think we
So
can, we can be clouded by love, I think, what we think is love anyway. So sometimes we're not thinking logically about these things.
yeah, so can you say
Mm.
a little bit more about that? What you mean by that?
Because sometimes I think actually I did something really crazy I think it was last year or something. I was having a lot of doubts and I was being stonewalled. So I got a
Hmm.
pen and paper and I wrote down all the things that bothered me about this person, like from the smallest thing to the red flags. And I started writing and I got to 4 pages of
Wow.
and some of the things were just tiny things, like that could be, not really like red flags at all, but just like this tiny thing bothers me, or but then, and then it was. I think it's really important to keep a record of things because then you know how long things are bothering you for. And I
Hmm.
wrote this, I think it was in April, and a few months later, I revisited that list and I thought, how many things have improved in this time, So it was a very powerful exercise that I did. And but it was very hard because I think sometimes that one of the questions I've had with my friends is, what's more important, like falling in love, loving a person, Or do you have this mold, this idea of what you want a relationship to be like, and that someone is has to fit that, you know? Because I've always chosen, I haven't really chosen, but I've fallen in love with people, and I haven't given it enough attention to what I really need and want and
Yes.
desire in a relationship.
Yes.
And it's only now that I'm getting very intentional. I'm reading lots of books. I've done lots of therapy recently, to try and get more clarity about what I want. And your book is really helping me get some, even though I'm single right now, to kind of get some kind of idea and tools so that I will be able to handle, things like conflict in the future and still honor my needs and respect someone else at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm just in awe of what you're doing, and
Mm,
it's everything that I feel so good about. That
mm,
the first of all, the exercise of really writing things down, but that's really going back to pillar one, is that you're really connecting with yourself.
mm,
And that's your epicenter. And you're like really listening within and not gauging based on just maybe what you feel like, what feels good by just this person, that
mm,
you feel these feelings for. But is
mm,
it really serving me? Is it really going to be can I create a sanctuary with this person? Or is it,
mm,
am I like trying to do triple time to make up for how this is actually making it harder for me to do my own individual, like good work in my life and fulfillment in my life? And so, and then also really looking to see, I do have a chapter. It's not really a chapter. It's like an addendum at the
mm,
last section is, should I stay or should I go?
mm,
And it's a 7 questions to ask yourself. If you're unsure if this is the right match for you,
mm,
um, or if you're really unhappy, because if you're reading a relationship book, it's often, not always, but often because you're struggling with something and you might have some doubt. So it's
mm,
7 questions to ask yourself and 7 questions to ask about your partner or relationship that that you see as potential for them.
mm,
And so I think a single person is a good candidate for the book more than I realized, because you
mm,
really are, and what I'm hearing from you is you're equipping yourself to really be selective and to create a space for attracting somebody who's going to really fit at your energy vibration, for lack of a way of putting it. Like you're really evolving and you want to attract somebody who's going to meet you there and honor you the way you're starting to really honor yourself.
But one other real obstacle, I think, from this is that we have this scarcity mindset when it comes to love. And sometimes you have this amazing connection with someone that you've not felt for a couple of years, let's say, and the dating scene is disastrous. It's really bad. So that one time when you do have a really good date and a really good connection, we can kind of over, let's say, I don't know what's the word, put it on a pedestal, for lack of a better word. And
Mhm.
then we put up with a lot of things just for that connection or the illusion of connection that we perceive. And that can make us stay in relationships that are toxic. 'Cause that's what the situation I was in. And one thing that really helped me was really crazy, but during some very toxic exchange on WhatsApp, I actually put some of the messages into Chat GPT and I asked, what is the tone of this message? It was brilliant. I'm going to make content about this because it was something that really was so good. I didn't tell him I was doing this, but it was so amazing for me because this Chat GPT was telling me this. It's blame shifting. I can't remember what other words, but minimization, passive aggressive, gaslighting. And I didn't know half of those words. I knew gaslighting, and they would give examples of all of those things. And I was like, and I started looking up minimization. I was like, wow, that is what I've been going through. And it kind of validated my own experience when someone was trying to invalidate me. So it was
Mm.
really powerful.
So
And
powerful.
yeah, and then ChatGPT would give out options of what to write back to de-escalate it. It was so
Gosh.
interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. And
It's
then journaling
incredible.
prompts for heartbreak. And I mean, it's just ChatGPT's been a really good
Yes, a really good
stand-in
like
therapist. Yeah.
relationship coach. Yes.
Yeah, and,
Yeah,
and
but the first step happened when you decided that you were going to question and you were
yeah.
going to not use this person as going into his or her movie, I don't know who, but
Yeah.
into their movie for
Mm,
you to determine, or an unconscious movie of I just need to stay with this person because there's no other choice.
yeah.
And you
Yeah.
just were willing to, you were willing to choose you and say, I just at
Mm,
least need to get feedback about, is this good for me? Is this not good for me? What is this really?
Yeah.
And you're just that is the most important step. But I think the dilemma that you describe because of the dating scene
Yeah.
is really common. And like you said, but it's kind of been going on while there are unique problems in dating in today's times.
Mm,
It's still, I think, a universal and timeless fear and reason why people stay in a less than ideal or even unhealthy relationship or
mm,
unhappy relationship because of they don't know the uncertainty, would I ever find somebody else?
mm,
And so I think that's really where it takes a real commitment and a sense of trust in your life and in the process of life that you are worth more than that. And
mm,
there are definitely times when people have to decide, like, there is no panacea. The grass isn't always greener. And sometimes we need to work with the relationship we have. That's why I give those 7 questions for
mm,
yourself and for your relationship to see, sometimes we're leaving a relationship because we're looking for too much perfection or we're too externalizing our happiness that this has to be perfect and fulfill me.
mm,
But often we don't leave an unhappy relationship because of the unknown.
mm,
And I just, and we have to be prepared. We could be alone. That's always
mm,
important. Like, can you support yourself? Can you find your own happiness and well-being and your own inner companionship? And can you create a community? Like, that's realistic, but
mm,
you're never going to be able to find the fulfillment that you're seeking if you stay in an unhappy relationship.
mm.
And so the risk, I think, is worth it. And each it's case by case for each person.
Definitely. And it's interesting because sometimes it takes an outsider to kind of reflect your light back to you when your partner's not seeing your light anymore. That can
Mm.
really be
Hmm.
kind of dangerous and also comforting at the same time. I just written down
Yes.
something here from remembered in your book. I love journaling so much. I've done so much journaling. Also, I've got prompts from ChatGPT about reprogramming my subconscious mind, about heartbreak and things like that. And I've uncovered a lot of things I didn't
Mm.
even realize about myself. And in your book, you talk about couple journaling. I just think that's amazing to actually share
Yeah.
experience and
Yes.
maybe read what you've written to each other and then get some insight about how the other person is processing
Mhm.
your your obstacles. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's 2 different ways I see it being used. It can help de-escalate when
Mm.
it's really getting elevated, because when couples are really, I'm pointing at my couch over there, but when couples are really, they can't regulate their emotions to have a productive conversation about their conflict, and it's happening in real time in my office. Sometimes it's really strong. I'll give them a piece of paper, a pad of paper and a pen, and I have these 7, I think it's 7 questions, maybe it's 9 or more that in the book,
Mm,
that is a co-journaling exercise so that helps calm them down. But it's
mm,
also a really good way to use journaling and share your journaling, whatever you feel comfortable with, of course, with each other to just keep enhancing the intimacy and breakthroughs. And we're
mm,
just calmer when we are journaling. It helps us regulate. And then also when we're sharing something we've written, we share it in a way that's more calm,
mm,
neutral, and we can hear each other better that way.
mm.
The judgment, we sometimes can tame our judgmental language a little bit better when we're writing. We're more,
Yeah. Not
because we
relax.
have to see what we've written, and it's like, okay, I better not say it that way. I'm going to try to say it in the most generous way possible. So it can, yeah,
Mm,
that's great. I
mm,
love it
mm.
yeah,
Yeah, I
that
love
you
that.
like that.
A couple of quick questions I ask all of my guests. What is the book that changed your life?
Oh, wow. I would say it was, there's a book in my counseling world called, written by Carl Rogers. I think it's called Person Centered Therapy. And it really helped to see the potential we have as a human being. And that's the first one. And the second one it's a small little book called How to Raise Your Self-Esteem
Okay.
by Nathaniel Brandon. And it was really like getting into the idea that we grow and enhance our sense of connection with ourselves by being aware of ourselves. Because if we aren't willing to be aware of our honest truth, then we can't love ourselves if we aren't willing to at least pay attention and notice what's going on inside. So I remember the moment I was reading that book, because these were both in grad school. And then in
Mm.
my spiritual life, it was reading a book called The Power of Kabbalah
Okay.
by the teachings of Rav Berg. and it's very psychological and also spiritual. And my husband and I both read it. We read 10 pages and both said this is something we both want to do together. So that really was that took our spirituality, took allowed our relationship to move and deepen in quantum ways. That was life altering. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because I think if you're on a spiritual level with someone, that's just a whole other level. That can be very,
Yeah.
very deep and elevated at the same time.
Yes. And so much of it's
Yeah.
about growth, actually. I view
Yeah.
spirituality as the desire to develop and grow. And it's what kind of is universal in any path.
Mm,
It's more spiritual and not necessarily religious. Brings all of it together is that we're here to keep developing and growing.
definitely.
And it's
Uh,
fun. It's the
yeah.
taste of transformation that we're really looking for the most.
Absolutely. I think it's transcendental, definitely.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
Do you have an affirmation or a quote that you live by?
Yes. Well, I always it's hard for me to do one, but the one that stands out to me right now is that I love you, I care about you, and I want what's best for you. And
Mm,
I say that to myself and invite others to say that because it's a way to really remove the murkiness of self-doubt and self-blame and just to be able to drop into your heart and have compassion for yourself and do what is going to be light and simple and loving for yourself.
mm. Yeah, I think self-esteem is such an important part of love. Because because I feel
Mm.
like now I'm going through this process that the more my self-esteem and self-love and self-care is coming into tact, the less likely I am to kind of accept that person back in my life. Because
Exactly.
it's so interesting because I think when you lose
Yes.
something, shortly after you want to get it back as soon as possible. There's a void. But then over
Absolutely.
time, when you start to create more kind of systems for yourself, then it becomes like, no, that's not going to fit anymore, and it feels very,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. I love that. I'm so happy for you. It's a
Yeah.
full-time job. It really is. It's fortifying yourself with your own, like you said, filling up in other ways and to
Mm,
able to endure what's so uncomfortable about leaving someone
mm,
is why so many of us don't because
mm,
but it's worth it and it gets better over time. I don't know if you've noticed
mm,
that you find yourself getting stronger
mm,
and then are more likely to attract somebody
mm,
who is quantum. There are physical
mm,
things to do to find the right person for you or a good match, but it's also I find it to be metaphysical. Like
mm,
you're raising your own relationship with yourself, and so that's going to attract somebody who is more ready for that. It may take a little longer. Like it's easy to find
mm.
somebody unhealthy.
Yeah, yeah.
It's right,
Mm,
and it just means being more particular, not
definitely.
overly, but
Yeah.
appropriately particular.
Yeah, because I think because in my profession, I've been a sex toy designer and reviewer for many years, as well as this podcast. So
Mm.
a lot of my content is about female sexuality. So that has been a bit of a barrier for me, or kind of an obstacle, maybe perceived by myself as well. So it takes a certain type
Mm.
of man who's not going to be intimidated by that. Um,
Exactly.
but then I believe I realized that that was my own limiting belief. So in my journaling that I've done, I realized that I had two limiting beliefs. One was the fact that I'm a sexual wellness expert, and the other one was that I feel like quote unquote weird or like or kind of very spiritual. So,
Mm.
and it's what's interesting is I've interviewed two people for my podcast who are the example of what I fear is actually possible. What I thought was an obstacle is actually possible. Like I've interviewed many sexperts or sexual wellness experts who have very healthy monogamous relationships. And like if it worked for them, it can work for me. So I think having role models is really important. Another
Yes.
spiritual meditation teacher I interviewed, Steve Nobel. He's all about leveraging weirdness and stuff. And I think once you honor your weirdness, then you're more
Yes.
you're more likely to attract someone who's on your level and who can get you. And
And who will love that about you.
yeah, that'll be your biggest asset. So I think
Exactly.
yes, I think I'm just trying to like now I'm thinking now there's no reason why I shouldn't have love in my life because I feel like I'm a student of love. So and with books like
Mm.
yours are really helping me
That's
master
beautiful.
this. I'm gonna have so many
Yes.
tools for whoever's next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and your own
Yeah.
experience is like how you can really help people the most. Like as
Mm.
you are making that journey, then you have, a really deep sense of how you can help others. It's just,
Yeah.
I
I
find
do
that's the
believe
way
that
it
like
goes.
yeah, when with through partnership, you in someone like with my experience, I can actually give more to my work, from that
Yes.
perspective of partnership
Yes.
and intimacy,
Yeah.
etc. Yeah. So,
Wonderful.
do you have any tips for single people who are looking for love?
Yeah, I think the first step is just doing exactly what you're doing, which is
Mm,
really first turning within and really loving your own life and appreciating yourself and like getting to a place where you would never be one and anyone else and
mm,
celebrating that. And and then exploring what maybe the barriers are for you.
mm,
Um, and also keeping in mind that you can have a beautiful and rich life like on your own. Like
mm,
being a single person isn't an apology or isn't a booby prize. You really
mm,
can have a fulfilling life. It paradoxically sometimes it allows more opening,
mm,
while keeping your desire big for the desire to be partnered.
mm,
And I think also kind of thinking out of the box of things that you thought you wouldn't be willing to do
mm,
to stretch yourself and grow or meet someone and take the risk and make it more about the effort and the willingness and
mm,
less about the outcome.
mm.
And um, yes, those are
Okay.
some of the things that come to mind.
Amazing, amazing. So where can people find you?
Well, you can find I have a website, Dr. Rachel Glick, DrRachelGlik,
Mm,
and there you will be able to see things I've written, and I have a media page that shows the different articles that I've been writing most recently. And then also you can order the book there too. It shows like 4 or 5 different ways that you can order the book. I'm also on Instagram
mm,
and
mm.
LinkedIn.
Okay, I'll be looking for you on it. What's your Instagram handle?
It's the same, Dr. Rachel Glick, DrRachelGlik.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much
Yes.
for joining us today on the
Oh, my
Orgasmic Lifestyle.
pleasure. Yes, I feel like we could keep talking and talking.
The book I'm reading now is The Power of Enough: Finding Joy in Your Relationship with Money. And this is by Elizabeth Husserl. And she is a future podcast guest. I'm so excited to speak to her. And I'm really enjoying this book. I would say I'm about a quarter or a third of the way through. And I've read many books about money, and this is very different from other books that I've read. And what I like about it is that it talks about the embodiment of wealth. It's a very holistic approach to wealth, not just focusing on money, but abundance all around and having a wealthy mindset, an abundance mindset, and also connecting with the energy of money, which is something I really enjoy. I do think that money is connected to our self-worth and our self-love. For example, when we talk about how do we price our services, what we are accepting into our lives, and yeah, how we are using our money as well. And she talks about money and wealth in a kind of very holistic way, not just talking about actual physical money, but also having, let's say, a wealthy mindset when it comes to your relationship with your body. Like, what are you eating? Are you moving? Things like that, and enjoying intimacy, as when talking about the heart space, intimacy and good relationships. Because what's the point of having all this money if you can't really enjoy it? And you can't really have, fulfillment in other areas of your life, because true abundance is not just about having money in the bank. It really is also about personal relationships and feeling, and health and things like that. So I love the fact that it's more holistic. But one thing, going back to actual money, that I found really interesting in this book and quite novel, is that she talks about having a conversation with money. She uses the letters CW and then the dollar sign. So having a conversation with money and putting, let's say, having your chair and then another chair in front of you, and maybe having your credit cards there or a pot of coins or something that you have to represent money, and really having a conversation with it, and then being quiet and listening to what money is telling you. And that can be quite interesting, especially if you're new to kind of intuition work or things like that. Like, that could feel a little bit strange at first, but it's kind of a good thing to do, I think. And in those moments when you're silent and just waiting for messages, I find I do love those types of things and receiving downloads from the divine. But in this case, it's money. And when you have those conversations, you can really get emotional and say, you weren't there for me. I know you, where are you when I need you? As if it's almost like a person or an entity, which is something we spoke about with Alara Sage in a previous podcast, who is a wealth oracle. So it's kind of a similar vibe to that concept. So I find that I haven't actually done my conversation with money yet. I've just been reading about it, but I think I will. But in the past, I have done similar exercises. One that I really enjoyed was writing a letter to money, and it really went over how I've perceived money from my childhood. I'm going to share kind of a personal story. I'm getting very personal today. I'm going to share a personal story with you. When I was a child, I used to spend my summers in Ireland, and I remember I was given some money from some relatives, and getting a few notes is kind of a big deal when you're a child. I mean, all you do is spend it on sweets and things like that. There's nothing else to spend it on, and so sweets. And I think I was about 11 at the time, and I was in a souvenir shop, and I found this poster with a guy, like a farmer, and he was in Wellington boots and a blazer and a flat cap, and he had all these. He was kind of had his back to the camera, kind of thing, or back to the photographer. And he was holding his coat open like a flasher. And in front of him were all of these cows just around him and looking at, obviously, his genitals. And the big caption on the poster was, "Expose yourself to Ireland." And I just thought it was hilarious. I've always had kind of a naughty humor around. I've always had a kind of a naughty, humorous taste, let's say. And when my parents saw that I bought that, they went mad at me. I mean, really, I got told off so badly, and my mother actually took the poster and took it back to the shop to get a refund. She said, "Oh, she's my daughter, she's crazy," kind of thing. But from that moment, I was not allowed to actually handle my own money, and that had a massive impact on me and my relationship with money. And so in life later, that was kind of, it just felt like I wasn't worthy of money almost. But then a few years later, that perception completely shifted. And I wanted to go on a school trip to France. And my parents were not really going to invest in school trips to France. They didn't really see it as being necessary because I was already getting a free education that was good enough. But I was just so passionate about languages. And obviously, I've lived abroad, and most of my life now I speak 4 languages. So it was something that was part of me, my identity since I was very young. And to actually get to France, the only way I was going to do it was to pay for it for myself. And I actually got a job when I was 14, washing up, and I was getting paid £1.90 an hour. And I managed to actually pay for my school trip, which was amazing. And I felt so in control. It was really great. I loved the independence. I think for me, independence was something that I really wanted in life. Some people choose dependence and they want someone to look after them. But I was the complete opposite. I wanted to have that freedom of choice and also just discovering a new country and a new language. I was really fascinated by that. And I remember when we were going on the ferry over to France, and I asked someone, "What time is it, please?" And I asked in French, "Quelle heure est-il?" And this French guy said to me, "Il est 11h30 en France, mais il est 10h30 en Angleterre." And I was like, oh my God, I understood. He said it's 11:30 in France, and it's 10:30 in England. And all of my school friends didn't care, that none of them spoke French or were interested in exploring the culture or the language. Whereas for me, paying for it out of my own pocket that I, washed many plates for, got wrinkly fingers from all the fairy liquid, it was a very different experience. And it really goes to show that, working for your own money has a very different, it's very different from just being handed something. But you can still appreciate presence, of course. But this was a real, it's a real pivotal moment in my financial education. And later in life, I've actually done a lot of journaling about money, and I'm kind of getting a much better relationship with money these days. And I'm just very proud to be debt free, no credit cards, and just getting to a point where expenses are less than earnings, which is a wonderful place to be. But money for me is like, I see it as a tool for freedom and a tool for self-love, and a tool that can help me express myself, because I would love to do way more things than what I'm doing already. And it's always, a lot of the times, the restrictions are financial. I mean, I would love to travel a lot more, and and not have a fear of where am I going to live in a few years, that kind of thing. Just have the root chakra, the kind of basics of life all sorted, but also having, other parts of your life, like the fun parts, as already integrated as well in my existence. And a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago, I lost a big contract, and that was a big blow to my self-confidence. And I actually filled my iPhone. I have an iPhone. I use the reminders app in it. And I really suggest this to you if you have an iPhone or maybe similar. And in the reminders app, I receive about 10 affirmations a day. They're kind of programmed throughout the day from 10 o'clock until 6 o'clock, with affirmations related to money. So they just pop on my phone, and I just remind myself of something. And one was, I love money gives me flexibility and stability at the same time. That's something I really love about money, is that it can really ground you, give you that stability, but also it can give you flexibility of choice of how you spend your time. But of course, even in the book, going back to the book, people who have a lot of money can have a lot of anxiety as well, the fear of losing the money, and also the fear of, are people around me because of I've got money, or do they actually really like me? So yeah, there's money does provoke a lot of emotions in us, and also people want to show they have money. It can also really exaggerate your ego as well. You want to maybe show the world that you have money, whereas a lot of people who are more self-assured might not need that at all. So it's really interesting. And I've also mentioned here that I'm actually doing Think and Grow Rich book club at the moment. Every couple of weeks I'm meeting a friend in a different luxurious location of Barcelona, and we are taking a deep dive into a chapter at a time. And recently we did specialized knowledge, which was super interesting, about how we can leverage our specialized knowledge. And in that chapter, Napoleon Hill talks about, free education, how no one really appreciates it. But when people invest in their own education after graduation, that has a very different, we apply it in a very different way, because we're more kind of, I paid for this, I'm going to make the most of it. And also maybe when we reach adulthood, we have a better idea of what we want to do with that knowledge, and what we want to learn exactly. So yeah, I'm just loving learning about money, and I'm loving just that feeling of having money and what you can do with it. It's just so much fun. But of course you have to be careful to, stay grounded and always choose healthy habits, like the ones we talk about here on the Orgasmic Lifestyle, where every day is a climax. So that is the book I'm reading now by future podcast guest Elizabeth Husserl, The Power of Enough: Finding Joy in Your Relationship with Money. Highly recommended. Now it's time to slow things down as we prepare for this episode's guided affirmations meditation. It's probably not a good idea to listen to this while driving or operating machinery. Instead, take a break from whatever you're doing, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and enjoy. I choose peace over conflict. I listen with love and understanding. I choose to listen with empathy and speak with kindness. My relationships are filled with mutual respect, understanding, and love. I release any fear or anger and replace it with compassion and understanding. I release anger and embrace calm. I forgive and let go. I choose peace over conflict. I listen with love and understanding. I trust that conflicts are opportunities for growth and deeper connection. I forgive myself and others, allowing love to guide my actions. I am grounded, calm, and clear in all my interactions. I am open to resolution and healing. I forgive and let go. I choose peace over conflict. I listen with love and understanding. I communicate with love, patience, and respect. I release all negative energy and embrace healing in my relationships. I am committed to finding common ground and creating harmony. I communicate with kindness. I forgive and let go. I choose peace over conflict. I listen with love and understanding. I release negativity and welcome peace. I grow stronger through every challenge. I am open to understanding and finding peace in every situation. Love guides my actions and words. I forgive and let go. Are you looking to strengthen your pelvic floor in a fun and engaging way? Introducing PeriFit, the pelvic floor trainer that combines biofeedback with interactive video games. With PeriFit, you can track your progress and improve your pelvic health while playing games with your vagina on your smartphone. It's easy, effective, and more importantly, it's fun. For a limited time, you can get 25% off with the code Venus15 at checkout. Visit perifit.co today and take control of your pelvic health with PeriFit. That's perifit.co and use the code Venus15 for 25% off. The link is also in the show notes below. Strengthen, play, and thrive with PeriFit. Disclaimer: consult your healthcare provider before starting any new fitness program. To find out more about me and my orgasmic lifestyle, visit venusohara.org or follow me on Instagram at instagram.com/venusohara. Make sure to search for the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast by Venus O'Hara in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks for listening, have an orgasmic week, and make sure every day is a climax.